T minus 40 seconds. T minus 30 seconds. T minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Welcome to the Play It By Ear podcast, the podcast where the topics may vary because, hey, we play it by ear. And now your hosts, Eric Fiskus and Brady Liming.
Oh, the weather outside is frightful.
Well, the weather outside is weather. What was it when they were drunkenly singing along to that song?
I don't know. You lost me on that one.
You not heard that?
All I know is my yard's covered with snow and I don't like it.
Snow. Get some snow in the yard.
Don't like it.
Don't like it. Yeah, it every year it happens to me about this time. You know, around the holidays it's all right, but that frightful, whiteful stuff, it's kind of like, why do I live in Ohio again?
If it doesn't get me extra sleep in the morning, it's useless. That's my take on it.
Yep. Nothing about the flake gives you extra sleep.
No. Hello, Savannah.
Savannah.
Maxwell.
Merry Christmas.
Yep. Merry Christmas. All right. There are other people in the room. If you'd like to check in, please do. If not, linger in the shadows. Up to you. It's all up to you. I've been under it this week. I don't ever get sick, and I've gotten sick.
You don't have the Rona, do you?
No Rona.
Do you have the RSVP?
I don't know. Maybe it's some respiratory thingy. I can't remember the last time I took a sick day for being sick, but I made it through half a day, Monday and Tuesday. Came home early both days. But,
just couldn't take it anymore. Man, I'm sorry.
I think I'm on the other side of it.
Yeah, meaning getting better, not going toward the light.
Yes, getting better.
Okay.
Getting better. Allison, hello. Seems as though every time we're in Ohio, there's no snow. My daughter's always disappointed. Well,
speaking of Alabama and snow, I knew a fair lass back in the day that did college. She went to college at University of West Alabama, and she is an Ohioan. And she cracked up that down there was like a quarter inch of snow, and nobody knew what to do. And like all the college students were out in the greenery, you know, doing snow angels. Yeah, like they did. People were like flying off the road.
Amateurs. Hello, Miss Wilson.
Eric, and I'm such a bad person, and I apologize in front of Miss Wilson. I haven't got to jump you in yet, but Miss Wilson bought us some games.
You should apologize to Miss Wilson for a lot of things, but
hey, but she bought us 2 games to play on air.
Awesome.
And I will share those with you later. We cannot share them with our audience because, well, that just wouldn't be very fun. So,
well, maybe we can get our third head back, and then maybe we can on our logo. I mean, on our logo.
I ain't touching that. Well, go right
you're
ahead,
not
Eric.
Touching it. Sure, you're not. That's why you wear glasses. Anywho, Welcome one, welcome all. If you've never been here before. By the way, back to that comment. I didn't finish. Her daughter's always disappointed. Well, Allison, I would love to be disappointed by no snow. That's my take. But I understand kids like it. But me as a kid, I never liked it. Never liked playing in it. Too cold. I don't like my feet being cold. And then the snow gets in your boots, and then it melts, and your feet get wet. And don't like it. Don't like any part about it. So, off my soapbox now. Hello. Well,
I don't
we
think
got.
we'll publish that one, will
Oh
we?
wow, John, are you jealous? I mean, Brady is a manly man and all, but
A what?
Savannah dreaming of kissing him. I mean, wow, boy, it's like let it all go. I mean, we have a lot of confessionals here today.
Savannah, I'm flattered. I do not know how to take this. I do not know how to take that compliment. Your husband brought it up, and I don't know what to say.
Apparently, he is not threatened by you, Brady. So,
Oh man. So oh geez, but before we even get started, we got before we get on our topics, we've got to mention the strangeness that happened in our parts of Ohio yesterday when social media was swamped with images of an emu, a
only in
wayward
Ohio.
emu that
Only in
was
Ohio.
running down Route 62 toward Hillsborough traffic jam, and
Let me see if I
so
can find that and share it.
yeah, but I would like everybody out there in Play It by Ear land to know that the emu is safely secure, waiting for you know, waiting for its caretaker to come back, I guess.
Well, thank goodness. Thank
So
goodness for that.
we have all kinds of wildlife shenanigans around these parts. I had a fox darting through my front yard yesterday, getting my canines all in a tizzy.
That reminds me of a story. A fox near your house. Maybe it was the same fox. So I can't remember if it was me and Becky riding around, or so we're driving around back by your house. I'm not sure why we were back there, but we saw a fox. So we decided to watch it. So it would walk, and then it was going to relieve itself, conduct some commerce there on the ground. But then it saw us watching him, and he'd walk away a little farther, and we'd follow him, and he'd start to go again, and then he'd look at us and walk away. He never could go. We were interrupting his conduction of commerce.
So I think we have a new character in the fictional animal, semi-fictional animals played by Eardom. We have Hugo, the unintentionally constipated fox.
Yes. Yes.
Why Hugo? Why not?
Well, I don't know if he was constipated. I think he just had stage fright.
Well, he had enough stage fright where it kept him from conducting commerce. So,
all right. So let me see here. Let me share this screen here. I know we're already off on a tangent.
down a rabbit hole.
Yes. Share screen. Tab. Share.
Action.
All right. So there, I couldn't find a picture, but there was the post. One post I saw on Facebook, and this is all I saw first, and I'm thinking, what?
What?
The emu is on 62 South, crossing the bridge, walking toward Hillsborough before the high school. So I'm thinking, what is going on?
Well, if it was heading south, going that direction, our Play It by Ear member Todd, that's right around his house.
It
So
is.
that emu is lurking close to Toddland.
Well, but here's the thing though, and something that people probably didn't think about, and it wouldn't really mean anything to anyone who's not from around this area. But if it was crossing the bridge, walking toward Hillsborough, then it would be heading north, not south. But that's just me.
It's an emu. It's Australian. Its sense of direction is probably backwards. It's flipped. It's not used to these northern hemisphere directions.
Yes. Its toilet water goes the opposite direction. So.
Do you know what? When I would do fifth grade social studies, that was always one of those poignant moments where my students would just stop and think about it. I said, "Hey guys, like in this when we were talking about latitude and longitude and all that kind of stuff, social studies-y stuff, I said, you guys realize that in Australia, birds fly north for the winter," and they would go like, "Dude, deep." So that really got them thinking,
Right.
Might even get some adults thinking out there.
That's true. I never thought of that. But okay, Miss Wilson, one of the precious moments of teaching exchange students is when they see their first snow out the window.
Yeah, if they're Brazilian or now, it seems to me like we had a Norwegian exchange student, like Sven or Lars or something like that. I think our snow would be a major letdown, but our Brazilian exchange students, absolutely.
Thought they were in a blizzard.
Yes. And one last comment about the emu. It was also rumored that he had a gecko with him, and they were wandering toward an insurance house. I had to go there, didn't I? For those of you uninitiated, Eric hates the Liberty Mutual commercials.
Hate is not a strong enough word. Every iteration of the Liberty Mutual commercials, those are the worst. Liberty Mutual can't decide what it wants to be. They have those ones in front of the Statue of Liberty where these people are sitting out by the harbor doing things. Then they have the Emu and Doug. I didn't know.
Nothing says.
Those marketing people are seriously overpaid. But I guess it gets people like me talking about it and griping about it, but I'm not buying Liberty Mutual. I changed insurance companies not too long ago, and I purposely did not take Liberty Mutual insurance, even though it was one of the cheaper ones. I refuse.
Because of Limu.
Exactly. I will not put my money towards that nonsense. All right. So we are now 12 and a half minutes in, and we've not gotten to a topic yet. So if you've not been here before, once we get off our tangents here, we do each have a topic that we bring to the table. We've not discussed said topic until right now. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that one too, Savannah. That one too. Young adults having fun with insurance. Insurance, like that is dumb. There's no words to say how dumb that is. I can't even find the words.
He's got his dander up, folks.
Oh.
His hackles are raised.
My hackles are raised. All right. So
we're in right here, right now, saith Jesus Yones.
All right. So we are in the order on the screen in which we'll go. So I will be first. Brady will round things out here on this show. And we'll get off this Liberty Mutual tangent right now, right here, right now. All right. So we have briefly discussed our topics coming into the show here. Exactly, Miss Wilson. That's hence the name of the show. We're playing it by ear. All right. So this is going to be an 80s theme show. And this is, please don't take this as a slight toward Todd, but we couldn't really go down the 80s rabbit hole too far with him because he was younger than us. So he could chime in on a few things, but if you got really deep into the rabbit hole, he was born in like 1977. So like the early part of the 80s. Yeah, he really, doesn't remember a whole lot about that. John Barney, that is a fact. We're going to get me off on another tangent again about athletic directors in the west central part of the state of Ohio, but I'll continue on with my intended topic here. John, now you poked the bear here. All right. So again, we couldn't go real far down the 80s rabbit hole because with Todd, I mean, he felt left out because he really couldn't deliver a lot of content on that because he hadn't really remembered living that content, although he did. So Brady and I can go down that rabbit hole, and we will go down that rabbit hole on this very day.
With a pickaxe and a lighted helmet.
Right. So, my topic is, and the historian in me, uh, and I guess maybe that's why we start the show off like this, because I guess I'm up for an argument right now, because that's what I'm going to do here, I'm sure.
No.
No. So, the title of this thing here that I found, despite your love for Stranger Things, and I mean,
The
a lot of
TV
people
show.
yes, right. Not actual strange things. Maybe you like those too. Despite your love for Stranger Things, the 80s actually sucked. Here's why. So first of all, this is written by someone named Trista.
Disqualified.
I would venture to say that someone with a name like Trista probably was not born in the 80s. That's what I'm guessing here, because that's a relatively newish name, I think. I don't remember any Tristas back when I was growing up, so I'm thinking Trista's probably, a millennial, maybe late 30s, somewhere along in there. So I will take Trista's opinions here with a grain of salt to begin with, but you and me, will shoot her opinions down one by one here. All right. Now, honestly, some of these things I probably will agree with, but
Okay.
I think it's just an extension of any decade you might talk about. So, number one. So this is November of 1979. So we're not even into the 80s yet for another 2 months. The decade began with an international hostage crisis. So the Iranian hostages were taken from the University of Tehran. They were held for 444 days. So I'm not sure why that caused the entire decade to suck. Yeah, I mean it was a bad thing. I mean don't get me wrong. It did.
I've got so much ammo. I'm chomping at the bit here.
Okay, well let me finish my opening thoughts and you can fire away. But so a little historical background here. So the Shah of Iran was the leader of Iran. He came to the United States for medical treatment. Certain factions of the Iranian people didn't think that we should have treated him medically. They decided to take our people hostage at the University of Tehran. So that's the background. They were held for 444 days. They were let go the day Ronald Reagan was inaugurated. So, Brady, fire away.
So when Ronald Reagan was inaugurated, not in 79, but 80, he
80,
got them back at the beginning. So the decade
81.
Thank you. So
January
we kicked off the
20th.
decade putting, pardon my French, the Ayatollah Asahola in his place because we got them back at the beginning of the 80s.
Yes.
Not the 70s, the 80s. So there, ha.
Because Ayatollah Khomeini knew Reagan wasn't playing around.
Yeah.
And not to mention, there were a few attempts there during the time to get them back, some of which ended very horribly. But at any rate, certainly was wasn't a good way to start out the decade. But again, I wouldn't say that that caused the entire decade of the 80s to suck.
Nope.
All right. Number two. Now, I do remember this quite vividly. Cold War paranoia was intense.
Ooh, that was true.
Yeah.
I think me and you both, many people our age, that was formative to us.
Yeah.
I mean, for God's sakes, we watched the day after the show on ABC, I believe, and kept us up for days. And, we had, Sting was singing about obliteration and, there was just so much. And yeah, it was, yeah, I mean, it was hard to explain when I was teaching social studies or history. It's like, guys, you don't realize, we thought that it could happen at any moment until Gorbachev.
Right.
And then you could kind of feel that like the foot tapping the brake a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
So but that was true. That wasn't fun. That was not fun.
Well, and honestly, in retrospect, when we found out what state the Soviet Union was in, really
California.
should not should. I'm
Yeah.
not talking about in 2022. I'm talking
Yeah.
about now. Probably shouldn't have been as afraid of it as we were because they were
Right.
not in a very good way. But
It's a good
and
bluff. It was a strong
it
bluff.
was, and ironically, we're kind of worried about those same nuclear weapons from Russia at this point in time. So
I mean, I
hey,
would never tell this to my students, but honestly, I'm a little bit more worried about the wild card now. You
yeah,
know, I
yeah,
think we have better defenses against it, but
right.
that being said,
And I can't ever. And we're getting really serious on this show, and more so than we normally do. But I think it's okay. Um, I would be hard pressed to figure that anyone is insane enough to let nuclear weapons go, because what does it gain Putin to destroy everything? What is he going to rule over? A pile of ashes? I mean, what does he get out of that?
yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
more worried about the people. Uh, I won't get into a big old socio-religious discussion about, but the people that kind of want to bring about the end of the world, those are the ones you got to worry about.
right, right.
So
All right. So of course Ronald Reagan talked about the evil empire. He did it in jest. He was on a hot mic and he didn't know he was on a hot mic, and that became a little bit of a news story for a bit. And I think he said we are outlawing the Soviet Union. Bombing commences in 5 minutes or something like that. It's yeah, and
yeah,
it was
what?
it wasn't really funny there for a couple days, but in retrospect, it was kind of funny. But anyway,
Yeah,
all right, number 3. Now we get a little more lighthearted here. The unhealthy and unappetizing food. All right, so I'll read what Trista here talks about. Even if you call it food, these TV dinners hit the scene in the 1950s. And by the 1980s, they could be found in just about every suburban home in America.
okay. My man Ricky Cobb of Super 70 Sports nailed this today. He had a Swanson's. He's like, why was it in the late 70s and the early 80s people ate like hobos? And it was it was a whole Swanson's TV dinner of beanie weenies. I mean, that was protein and formaldehyde basically.
Hobos. All
with,
right,
with
so
harkening back to Todd with a can of treat and a can of spam, smeat, if you will. And yeah, so yeah, hobo food.
never understood how the little pie could be 10,000 degrees
Oh, it's magma.
and the mashed potatoes still be frozen in the middle. How's that
Oh,
happen?
well, and worse yet, the tin trays of the TV dinners. The little wingy things that you could put your fingers on. You would mistakenly feel the bottom and feel those cold frozen mashed potatoes right out of Antarctica. But you would grab those wingy things and need to visit the Shriners Burn Institute because it just incinerated your fingertips.
See, and that was, I didn't mind the TV dinners so much, but it was really galling to me to have to eat around the ice cube in the middle of the potatoes because the outer edge of the potatoes was like a good temperature.
Oh
But
yeah, yeah. Well, no, the outer edge of them was like the center of Mount Vesuvius. And then the internal part was measured in degrees Kelvin. It would be like absolute zero, and all molecular activity stopped at the center of those mashed potatoes. It was a
so
science experiment on a plate.
so something I never did with that. Did anyone ever try to like mix it all together and maybe it would all be a constant edible temperature? I like that look
No,
on
that's
your
called vomit.
vomit. Yes. All right. So number 4, if you know Stranger Things, the mall there is called Starcourt Mall.
Mhm.
Um, number 4 says there was no Starcourt Mall. Says, do you know the mall where all the kids in Stranger Things like to hang out? It didn't exist. Malls were not built by small towns in the middle of nowhere in Indiana. the whole state probably had a handful of malls at the time. They were probably only in the biggest cities, which probably is not untrue. We happen to be in a place where we had an accessible mall here about a half hour away,
And
but
we're a small town. We're the very essence of small town, but it was reachable.
yeah,
So if you're in small town Indiana, you're a stone's throw from Indianapolis or Terre Haute or
Gary, Indiana,
Indiana or Evansville,
right,
or Bloomington.
right,
But it's a college town, so French Lick.
French. So, I don't know. Maybe somewhere in the canon of Stranger Things, you can find out where this place. What's the place called? Indiana. What's the town in Stranger Things?
It's Hawkins High, but what's the name of the Oh, sorry, I'm having a brain cramp. Sorry. It'll come to me in a moment.
Yeah, well, whatever. I'm not sure where it was in relation to Indianapolis or any of those other towns. So I'm neglecting the comments here because I have my window open in front of them. Tristan was a medieval knight.
Ooh.
Yeah. John Barney, Uncle Ronnie rocks. Yes, Uncle Ronnie does. Cold War permeated the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And that's true, Miss Wilson. I would venture to say, although I wasn't alive during the 60s, from what I know of 60s history, I'm thinking it was much more eminent then than it was when we grew up.
There once was a turtle by the name of Bert.
Bert. And
Hey,
Bert,
Bert, the
the
turtle
turtle
was
was very alert.
alert. Yeah, the duck and cover song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Duck and cover.
And of course, when Bert starts talking, he's got us. What do you see when you see the flash, kids? Arr.
Hi. Allison, very true. Cyber is the new war. That is true. I've often said some country on this planet will be taken over without firing a shot due to cyber warfare. So yeah, kind of scary. That's much more scary to me than actual bombs going
Yeah.
off. John, Grandpa, back in the day, we didn't have ice in our potatoes.
We just ate it raw, skin and all.
Yeah, that's true. Miss Wilson, the mass use and invention of microwave ovens caused the TV dinner reemergence. That is a fact.
Which, by the way, the microwave oven resulted because of Cold War military technology. So
True.
it went from being weaponized to mass produced in our homes.
And John, yes, I will be at Knightstown, Indiana at the Hickory Gym.
I thought that was in Milan.
Well, the team was from Milan. The actual gym where it was filmed is in Knightstown. So Hillsborough and White Oak will be playing boys and girls basketball games there on December 10th.
Cool.
So if you like to listen to that, you can tune in to WSRW Radio.
The
There you go, John.
tones of Eric and John.
Yeah, Eric and Stu.
Stu, excuse me.
Yeah.
Stu.
Right, there's our little plug. All right. Moving on quickly. All right, number 5. You couldn't get away from the cigarette smoke.
Now this is facts.
That is a fact.
But I can't pin that on the 80s. I mean, I was in a unique position where when I was in the band, our bar band days, that when we started playing, it was before the cigarette bans became a thing.
Yeah.
And then about 2 years into it, the cigarette ban hit in the state of Ohio. And oh my gosh, I had clothes ruined for being, it smelled like a combination of a Winston and a Virginia Slim, and stale beers spilled on my footses, not on my partaking.
Well, but even watching TV shows from the 80s versus the 70s and the 60s, I mean, the 80s shows didn't seem to have as many people smoking in them as 70s and 60s and prior to.
Don Johnson of Miami Vice, Detective Crockett, was known to bust out a cig in a very postmodern, paused way for dramatic effect. But, you really didn't. You really didn't see it too much.
No. John goes fact, but mom and dad had the cigarette triangle window open. That's something that probably went out in the 80s too. The little triangle window in the that was your vent.
Yeah. And congratulations, Savannah. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Amazing to hear.
That's congratulations. I mean, I hear, I've never smoked, but I hear that is the most addicting thing that there is, really, is
Yeah.
nicotine. But my dad quit cold turkey way back when, but people usually can't do that. So yeah, wish you luck on that journey. All right, so number 6 kind of ties in with number 5. Number 5, you couldn't get away from the cigarette smoke. Number 6 says, now I will have a problem with this, or the hairspray, as if that's a bad thing. So the saying in the 80s, the higher the hair, the closer to God. I happen to subscribe to that theory. I always appreciate a lofty set of bangs.
A lofty quaff.
So in addition to being unable to stop breathing cigarette smoke, you were unable to get away from all the hairspray fumes. To get those hairstyles as high as possible, many women opted for the fume-inducing aerosol hairsprays,
Aquanet.
which didn't just wreak havoc on those that got too close. It nearly destroyed the ozone layer.
Oh, please.
There is your political.
There it is.
Now I'm going to share this picture here, and someone tell me what's wrong with this, because I'm not seeing it. Me get to the right.
Once again, back to Super 70 Sports. It was a high school yearbook composite thing. Now, see, that hair is pretty high. That almost looks like Heather Locklear.
It does. I see no issue.
See, it's hard to look at the context. That is a beautiful face, but she's in the time capsule of her time.
Right.
I mean, think about mullets and 80s high hair and 60s long hair and 70s greasy that's not fair, but that was kind of the look. It was flat and straight, and then in the 90s you had the postmod hair shaved up in the back, long in the front. Hair goes in cycles.
Yes, it does. Yes, Miss Wilson, you did want to pay heed to any incendiary devices that might be around with said hair.
I mean, for Pete's sake, Adam Curry from MTV.
Yeah, exactly.
He had some lofty
locks.
locks.
I think that is his hair right there.
I think it is.
Yeah. So again, I don't see an issue. I mean, I never had hair like that, the long whatever. Mine looked stupid long like that, so I just didn't. Yeah. John, I had the Pat Riley number 8 gel hair do working. There was that
cream.
too.
Brill cream. Not only it goes on your hair, it'll keep the ball bearings lubed in any kind of jet plane or prop plane.
Little dab will do you.
All those brills that suffered to extract the cream.
All right, number 7. I don't know where to fall on this one, but the TV channels were awful. See, now I don't feel that the TV channels were awful. If they were awful, why then would all these shows be replayed endlessly in syndication?
Okay. You don't miss what you didn't have.
Right.
So when we had 4 channels, their awesomeness rotated. There was times.
And, most of our life up until we were adults, we had 3 channels.
Yeah. I was lucky enough because my dad constructed the Tower of Babel. Had this huge
No,
Pardon me. Pardon
no,
me.
you're right. Huge ass. Yes, that's right.
This big old antenna that would pick up radio signals from Iceland, and
and he would go in his little room in the
the CB
basement that we
room.
could never go into
Oh, the sanctum, the inner sanctum.
upon threat of death.
And a bit exaggerated, but it was like there was a CB tower and the TV tower. So every once in a while we get that fourth channel, especially man on Saturday and Sunday, channel 64, the eyes of Cincinnati, WIII.
Now, see,
It,
the beauty of your little setup was when the Bengals were blacked out in Cincinnati, you could draw in Columbus and
or
still watch
Dayton.
the.
Used to be Dayton.
Yeah, you could draw that in. That was valuable.
Yes, it was.
Then you had the
I
little
forgot about that.
had a little antenna turner on top of the TV.
Oh yeah, it might be a little bit
turn it.
snowy. It's like I think I see a leg and a ball in there. Like it looks like an orange helmet, but So, oh, by the way, I'm rocking my my white tiger hoodie for
Nice.
Steelers week. But anyway, but yeah,
dreaded Steelers week.
the dreaded Steelers week.
Don't forget that. And if Joey were in the room, he'd agree with us on that.
Yeah,
Not
Katie
much.
would
We
not.
probably not probably we much agree about on football, but I think we agree on that.
But you know, it's relative. Now there's so many choices. But now, mind you, on a Friday evening, if we were stuck at home for some reason, the poop comes that used to be on ABC, like Small Wonder and Urkel and all that.
Nasty.
That's some bad TV.
But we weren't home on Friday nights by the time those.
Of course not. So we were either socializing at basketball games or we were at Pizza Hut macking on chicks, 80s style.
And playing sit down Galaga.
Yes.
And waiting for our pan pizza.
Our pan pizza. While playing Galaga.
All right. John and I was the remote for my dad sitting next to the TV. That is a fact too.
There you go. Turn that off. You know, I was thinking about this. I like our friend Doug when he would speak of the only shows that his grandmother wouldn't watch. And one of them was the Muppets, which she called the Muffets. And didn't want to watch those because they weren't real, those Muffets. We won't get into the other one.
She liked that Lawrence Welk, though.
She did like that Lawrence Welk until about 7 o'clock.
Well, you kids, you know that Lawrence Welk is on right now.
I'd like to.
She guilt shame him into turning Lawrence Welk.
Yeah. I want to see Marlon Perkins from Mutual of Omaha's Animal Kingdom, Wild Kingdom, kick Lawrence Welk's butt. Because usually it was Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, which got sacrificed at the altar to Lawrence Welk. And I really wanted to watch Wild Kingdom.
Marlon Perkins isn't kicking anybody's butt. Jim, who's getting mauled by the lion, is the one kicking butt. So let's get that straight right now.
Tiny bubbles my butt. I want to see a cheetah mauling.
So, and here again is one of the things I feel like Trista was born in the 90s and has no recollection having lived through the 80s. Most towns didn't have movie theaters either, and VCRs weren't all that popular until the end of the decade. What?
Wampus.
We lived in Sardinia, by God, Ohio. I had a VCR in 1983. What's she talking about?
And we had town video.
Yes, we did.
Ha!
You know, again, people speak of things they know nothing of.
Moving
on. If you didn't live in a big city, there was nothing to do. We've done whole episodes on this. I can't remember the episode number, but Teenage Life in Brown County. It was one of the earlier ones.
I would challenge today's teenagers. The teen nightclub life that we lived in the 80s, it was unprecedented.
Before or since.
Before or since. We mingled in large ponds.
We did. So
2 teen nightclubs in Brown County.
Yes.
Wait a minute.
And one in nearby Claremont County.
Yes.
Exactly, John. Nothing to do. Hit the back roads with some refreshments.
Yes.
There
Some
you
Kool-Aid
go.
and pretzels is nothing better.
Right.
Moving on.
She says, if you lived in a small town during the 1980s, there was nothing to do after school. Nothing, nada, zip, zero, zilch.
Well, if she's talking about lines of blow, she might be right. But we were doing things. We were doing important things.
Oh, and this is worse. The next sentence here.
Oh.
Oh, wait. Now here we come. The sanctimonious piece here. Oh, wait. You could ride your bike down to the junkyard with friends to see if there was any cool stuff to smash, but that's about it. Get out of here.
I'm not even going to dignify that with a response, Trista.
Really? I wish I could contact this Trista.
Trista!
Trista.
Hey, there was no junkyard in our vicinity. No, I take that back. But our junkyards were hardcore so much that there was a lion attack. That junkyard had a lion that escaped and nearly ate a kid.
That is a fact.
So our junkyards were not to be trifled with smashing things. There was lions.
That is
So
a fact.
that
I had forgotten that, but that is a fact.
yes, that is fact. I was just talking about that. I was just talking about this today. Our friends of the show, Kevin and Sue and Lo. If your granddaughter Faith is listening, I referenced it this very day.
The lion attack.
Yes. Forget how it came. It was at the end of the day. Class I were waiting for the bell to ring. It happened last 2 minutes. And I don't even remember why it came up, but it did.
John, she needs a visit from Roy D. Mercer. That may be a little harsh, John. She's just misguided.
She's a yes.
Well, I just say ignorant, not misguided. I mean, she didn't even live through this. Ignorant.
There's a Southern Ohioism where the word ignorant becomes IGNERT. Ignorant.
And a 4-syllable word becomes 2 syllables.
Yes.
All right. Number 9, video game pixels were huge. And again, what's the problem?
Okay, Miss Trista, how was your cell phone when you were a teenager compared to now? Shut it. Time moves on.
Right. So today's video games, you have all these elaborate controllers and you can use all these keys on the keyboard. I think it took real skill to have a singular joystick and one button.
That's right.
To get things done.
There you go. Play Pac-Man with your fancy schmancy multi-controller.
So I even call you out there, Nintendo. I'm talking Atari.
The Atari 2600, which we would have to go to the arcade in a blinding blizzard, uphill both ways, to play some Pac-Man.
Yes. John, video games at the Wigwam in the Burrow, great time. I never was at the Wigwam at the Burrow, but Sardinia had an arcade, and it was loads of fun. And not only video games, I mean, you had pool tables, you had other things there that...
Billiards. An on-house tobacconist, if that was your thing.
All right, so I don't understand this one. I mean, I'll put it out there. A reason why the 80s sucked. Bullies carried knives.
Where?
So bullies carried knives and would threaten kids in the hallways, and there was no one to complain to because teachers grew up in the Great Depression, the principal served in World War II, and the PE coach was a Vietnam vet.
Stereotype much?
What? What is this? Everyone assumed that a healthy dose of trauma was good for child development, and the best advice you could get was that boys would be boys.
Now, I will go along with this a little bit because bullying and hazing was much more of a thing. We came of age, and when we hit high school in the middle of the decade, hazing was going out. It was on its way out. It wasn't like that, the movie, one of my all-time favorites, Dazed and Confused, where, the freshman would get worked over with paddles and all kind of humiliating things.
Right.
But I mean, I can remember being told that, at Eastern, the freshmen, it was part of the actual, what do you call it? It was sanctioned that the freshmen had to wear beanies for like the first month of school or something.
Right. Just scare tactics. But
Yeah.
so yeah, I'm with you. I go along with part of that, but knives. I honestly cannot think of one instance, and we are like, I'm sure every person, not every person, I didn't, but I would just throw a percentage out there. 70% of the boys in high school were carrying a knife of some sort, either on their person or in a vehicle. And not to mention shotgun racks in the trucks in the parking lot.
And they would fix their shotguns in the Voag in shop and Voag under the teacher's watchful eye and helping them,
I remember not only in our school, but in any school around us, of there being such a threat with a deadly weapon.
Let me put it this way. When I went to Mount Rushmore, when I was a Ute of about 7 or 8, I got a Mount Rushmore. It was a knife in it like a leather scabbard. And I wore it on my belt. Did I ever think of stabbing anybody? But no.
No.
No, I honestly don't know what I would do with it. Cut the heck out of a hot dog if I need it, but chop them hot dog handles right off. But other than that, no, I wouldn't even cross my mind. Did you ever get threatened with a knife? I didn't.
Never. Now, was I threatened with some fisticuffs every once in a while? Yeah.
Threatened a couple times.
Yeah. But I mean, that's been school ever since then and now and whatever. But deadly weapons. Again, I can't think of one singular instance of that.
Nope.
The whole time I was growing up.
Nope. My
All
dad
right.
did want me to carry a sap on the bus.
Sap. A sap is what?
A blackjack. It was like a leather sacket with some buckshot in it. Think of like a bar of soap and a sock, but with leather and like metal.
Were you being threatened on the bus?
There was an older kid giving me a hard time. And he's like, you just need to take a leather sap. As soon as he gives you a hard, like, whack him right in the back, crack him back in the skull. Now, you talk about a different era.
Yeah. So, if you had cracked said kid in the back of the skull, what
I
would
would have
his
got a
reaction?
standing ovation.
Yeah. This is true, Allison. There was more accountability at home for your actions outside the home back then. That's a fact. All right, number 11. Ready for the fighting words here. Reason why the 80s sucked. The music. Nothing says nostalgia quite like 80s music channel on the satellite radio. Michael Jackson, Radiohead, Prince, REO Speedwagon, U2, Queen.
She just made herself ignorant right there because Radiohead didn't come in the 90s.
Exactly. Oh, well, I mean, they were not. I'm not going to say they weren't around the late 80s, but they certainly were not.
No, they weren't. Like OK Computer, I think, came out in the early 92, 93.
That was their first
tops.
album? Was that their first album?
See,
I'm thinking
not
they were
OK
late
Computer.
80s, but they certainly were not widespread.
No.
I had never heard of them in the 80s. But anyway, so then there's Will's favorite song in Stranger Things, Should I Stay or Should I Go? The 80s were the heyday for rock and left an indelible mark on all music then, except for the decade's music was awful. There were some great artists such as those listed above, but that's about it. They weren't touring everywhere so that raving fans across the country could jam out to their hair-rocking concerts. Most of the music that came over the radio was pretty awful techno garbage. So
Besides
What?
Madonna and Paula Abdul and On Vogue, there was a couple. There was a couple exceptions, but even the pop music was band driven.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean, there were actual people playing those synthesizers and actual people singing without auto tune.
like Human League,
Yeah. Yeah.
Depeche Mode, New
Right.
Order,
Right.
Erasure,
Flock of Seagulls.
Flock of Seagulls, Susie and the Banshee. No, I mean nobody puts them in techno, but like you know,
And not to mention, okay, Huey Lewis and the News.
Brian
They
Adams,
right. So,
Prince.
well, she had Prince in her list there, but
Okay.
all these things sucked.
Uh-huh.
Aha. Yeah. I mean,
The
come on.
Cure,
I mean,
REM.
exactly, Savannah. 80s music is good. Clarence Carter's stroking, sheer brilliance.
Are you
Stroking,
satisfied?
stroking to the east, stroking to the west. Number 12, the 80s sucked because of toy commercials.
I got burned on a couple of them, which is referenced in previous episodes, like the Nerf boomerang and the Spider-Man web shooter. But the Spider-Man web shooter was in the 70s.
Correct. Television shows of the era were 23-minute long ads for toys. So many people who didn't grow up in the 80s don't realize the whole Transformer series is based on an 80s era cartoon show which was invented to sell the toys.
Woman,
Okay.
please. Okay, listen. There was GI Joe was fighting. GI Joe was ahead of its time. They
G.I.
weren't
Joe's a
fighting a
real American
country.
hero. Real
And not
American
only that,
hero.
he was fighting Cobra. Okay. And Cobra was a terrorist organization. It was ahead of its time. Cobra could have been Al Qaeda, you know? So she
Yeah.
needs to be educated. Well, hey, Tristan, now you know, and knowing's half the battle. So there.
Which I believe was also a saying from the 80s, right?
That's a saying from G.I. Joe. That's why it was funny.
There you go.
Darn it.
Right? Yeah, 80s G.I. Joe, right? Exactly, Miss Wilson. How many 80s bands songs continue to be covered today? Covered, sampled, whatnot, because Mike McConnell, if you ever heard him on WLW, he doesn't host talk show anymore, he was one of my favorite talk show hosts, but he always maintained that eventually we would run out of notes to write songs. There's only
There's
so many
unlimited combinations. Yeah.
right. So we're just about out of notes. That's why people are like covering all these songs, which is an interesting theory. But
It is.
anyway. All right. Next one, drugs continued. So this is an 80s problem. I mean, what? Drugs were there before the 80s. Drugs are still there now. Matter of fact, a lot of them are legal now.
Yeah. I mean, the devil's lettuce is now legal, but but for Pete's sake, for all the references to cocaine there was in the 80s, think about the things that are, like impacting so many lives since, the late 90s, the opioid epidemic. I mean to get serious, but I would counter the drugs were, and people got caught up at the web, but it was more recreational and people wrecked their lives. But drugs were expensive back then, from what I
Yeah,
understand. I mean, I was a kid, but nowadays, I mean, I won't get into I won't get into all this, but pa.
exactly. So here's the end of that little statement here. So you had the rise talking about Nancy Reagan and just say no. And so you had the rise of programs like DARE that were really nothing more than pitiful attempts of local police departments to connect with local kids. The nerve.
The nerve.
Seriously.
Let's
I
build that wall and make them terrified of the popo.
mean, that's why we have like resource officers now, you know. That's, I didn't think I would get this worked up over this little piece here, other than, taking shots at the 80s, but some of this is truly ignorant. So, I don't know.
Yes.
Elizabeth, I don't know.
Liz.
Brady, do you know Liz?
I know Liz well.
I don't know Liz. Nice to meet you, Liz. Thanks for tuning
And
in.
and it's a happy Liz is also a veteran.
Thank
And
you for your
thank you for
service.
her service. Veterans Day was just last week. And so anyway,
By the way, Allison, you too. Thank you for your service
yes.
in honor of Veterans Day. She says, I laugh my butt off at that. I say that all the time, and now you know, and knowing is half the battle. Yes. And your kids go, what are you talking about? Savannah, seems like drugs are worse now with fentanyl and heroin, and then in the 80s, even the 90s and early 2000s weren't as bad as the last few years. There were,
True facts.
yeah, true. So yeah, that shot at Dare was just not even warranted.
It's a little bit cynical. Yeah, Dare was a little bit corny, but let's not be cynical. It was coming from a right place. And I'm really gonna by the way, Trista, I love you. We're just debating, okay? So do not take this personally. We're just debating in the marketplace of ideas here. But I would like to educate her on the fact that I hope she wasn't taking a shot where she said Dare was just to connect with kids like they were trying to get info, like turn the kids into informants. Because if that's what she was implying, that's truly
Ignorant.
crappy. Yeah, that's crappy.
Ignorant.
Yes.
All right. Number 14, communication was lacking.
What do you mean?
Meaning we couldn't text each other on a drop of a hat.
No.
We couldn't Snapchat. We couldn't.
Thank
We
God.
actually had to talk to people.
Or you had to be on the phone and snake the darn cord halfway down the steps so you could be out of earshot with everybody.
That is true too. Or you had a dadgum party line like I did and had to wait for the people across the street to get off the phone to make a phone call.
Beulah, stop talking to Agnes about the ice cream social at the Presbyterian Church.
Yeah, you know what? You're not too far off there, actually. Yeah, probably the topic of the conversation just changed the names, but similar names, let's put it that way. All right. Only the wealthiest kids had walkie-talkies like Mike used to talk to his friends in Stranger Things. What?
Bullcrap. I had a $4 set of walkie-talkies that I got at my uncle's hardware store. Now, mind you, they had the awesome range of 4 feet, but we had them. You had to whisper in the walkie-talkie so you could hear it coming through the speaker so you didn't hear their voice. It's like, you smell like poop. And then, yeah.
Let's see. No one really had quick access to information. Like you had to go to the library and look at books.
Compton's Encyclopedia in my house.
There you go. Oh, here's some more fighting words.
Oh.
And you can see where this is coming from. Number 16, why the 80s sucked. Ronald Reagan's presidency. So I'm going to read this whole thing here.
Next. She is just not even from a political standpoint, but in the time capsule of time, the past of times, how could you even go ahead?
Ronald Reagan, who resided in the White House throughout the 1980s, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's just 6 years after he left office.
Do I take the low-hanging fruit or do I just leave it on the tree?
Just let me go on because the fruit will become increasingly low-hanging here. He was frequently confused in public, so much so that his wife actually invited an astrologer to the White House to provide advice on running the country. Under Reagan, who had a grand vision for creating a space-based missile defense system, the national debt more than tripled. It has continued to grow ever since then, so basically all of our political problems have some grounding in the 8-year reign of President Reagan.
how did the Soviet Union fare in that race of economics?
Okay. Beyond that, let's get back to this little piece about creating a space-based missile defense system. Do you know? I know you know. I'm just saying the collective you.
I know that you know, and you know that I
Yeah.
know.
It was a ruse. He was making the Russians think that's what he was doing.
So they would spend money they don't have because they were communists and they couldn't make money.
The sheer okay, you take back what you said, Trista. I love you. I don't love this person. This person is beyond ignorant, as John said so eloquently. That's probably why I said it. I just parroted what I read. But psyops, yes, exactly. It's exactly what it was. I have no words for this. I mean, Brady, like you said, historians would not even agree with that.
It does not matter what side of the political fence you are on, or if you agreed with some of the domestic policies or whatever. But guys, he brought down the wall.
Yeah.
He outspent them. They couldn't keep up.
Yes. Tying into number 17, and there's data to prove this wrong. The economy was awful for most people. I, the son of a auto worker and a nurse's aide,
And I, the son of a jet engine factory worker,
and a stay-at-home mother, it was not awful for us. I mean, were we living lavishly? No. It was not awful.
we were not taking vacations to Bora Bora.
No. He destroyed labor unions and set multinational companies on a track that would allow them to conquer the world within a decade. So, what does Trista think is going on now with multinational companies? From the push of the other side. So here I am we don't get political on this show and we try not to get too serious, but
This really isn't politics, though. This is
no.
economic facts.
Yes.
I think we're kind of crusty and salty about this because we're social studies teachers and hard,
Probably so. The year 1984 wasn't much better than the book.
Go on before my head explodes. I'm going to have an aneurysm on air and it's going to disturb our earbuds. So we better just move along.
We blew a hole in the ozone layer. So I'm just reading the headings now. People had mullets.
Oh, what about now, dang it?
Yeah, exactly. Poverty rates rose. So poverty skyrocketed in the 70s or 80s, I mean. The culture of greed was real. I don't disagree with that one.
I don't disagree with that one. We grew up with the yuppies and the whole Wall Street greed is good. It was exaggerated. It was a little bit parodied, but the consumer culture, I will give a little bit of leeway there.
Yeah. 23, the AIDS crisis. Again, don't disagree with that either. The way it was handled at the beginning. Probably should have been hit more head on with that. There was a moral crisis everywhere. What do we see going on now? Everyone is in a moral crisis now about everything. The 1980s saw the rise of the religious right, and adherents to this ideology saw moral filth and decay everywhere they looked.
There is I just had this conversation with my mom. They talk about a deep conversation. But in the early 80s, I will say that I got I don't even want to say bamboozled, but I was led to believe the Satanic Panic was bigger than it was.
It was.
And like books written about backward masking.
I mean,
And
my favorite band, Styx, made fun of it.
oh yeah.
I mean, they were part of that whole backward satanic messaging thing. And
what was the guy's name? I remember his last name was Larson. He was a
I mean, I
he had a
remember.
TV show. Or not
Well,
a TV show. I'm sorry. He was a DJ on Christian radio, and he had books that would just waylay into secular music.
well, I mean, Tipper Gore led that whole charge.
Yeah, the
Al Gore's,
PMRC.
yeah, Al Gore's wife, Democrat. So I don't see any mention of Democrats leading that charge because this obviously is a slanted piece here. But
Once again, we're not getting political. We're just kind of
no,
like
it's
saying,
it's fact. You know, it's.
I mean, for Pete's sake, Dee Snider, of Twisted Sister,
Yeah.
who is no conservative,
No.
did. Oh my gosh! If you want to see beauty of somebody just being just chipped away with razor sharp wit and just like destroying an argument, watch Dee Snider's testimony in front of Congress.
Yep.
My favorite one was when, well, actually, that song is about something else. So if you interpret it that way, I think your wife has a dirty mind. And the look on his face, oh my gosh. Yeah.
25, people were always insulting others. Uh,
Uh,
and again, I mean, what do we live in now?
well, I don't even know what exactly they mean. Is that like when you called your shortest friend, big guy, and your tallest friend tiny? Are we talking about insult, like, or when you called your friend, needle nose or something like that?
I mean, granted, there probably were some words used at that point in time that should have been.
Yes, to certain segments of society, yes, and we've evolved past that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I guess towards I'm going to concede that certain groups, absolutely, I could go along with that a little bit.
Domo, yes, John, Mr. Roboto. Allison, the difference back then is you get punched in the face. That is true too.
Yeah, that is true.
The terrible transportation, environmental
76 Pinto.
Yeah, the transportation was much more terrible in the 70s than in the 80s. All right, we have Call the Fashion Police, video and cassette tapes. Technology was slow and super expensive. I mean, it's relative, right?
Right.
It was slow compared to now.
I mean, for gosh sakes, I remember when America Online came out and we thought it was like a miracle.
Yeah. Corded phones were fun to play with, but not talk on. Yeah, don't disagree with that. You burned your hair while styling it. Yeah. Disney looked at things differently.
I don't even know what that means.
Consider the secret of NIMH, a modern fable about the
Secret of NIM. Yeah.
National Institute of Mental Health. Then there are the atrocities of All Dogs Go to Heaven, An American Tale, and The Land Before Time.
Fiber Goes West. Got to talk about fiber in the American. What was his name? Feifel or something like that.
Fievel.
Our friend Doug's like Fiber Goes West.
Plenty of parents today wouldn't consider showing those movies to their kids. Why not? I don't understand. I really don't understand.
Same parents that gripe about the violence in Tom and Jerry, which are disqualified from parenthood, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, there were latchkey kids, Missing kids were on milk cartons. Is that a
That was
bad?
a little
I mean,
scary, but
well, but I mean, it was effective though. I mean, a lot of these kids were found. So I mean, those are the reasons. I mean, I think we've vanquished many of those.
Trista, we love you. Okay, you're a craft. You brought a hot take, and just going to agree to disagree with you.
Yeah. You're much more diplomatic than I am on that. But
Okay,
uh,
so on that note, now I don't want you to make a face or anything, but I am listening. I'm listening to an Audible right now, and one of my favorite bands that impacted me huge was U2 back, in the day, and I'm listening to Bono's autobiography, and the man can tell a story, but I love it how he said yeah, he came to he came to Jesus on this a little bit. He's like, I was talking about share the wealth and share the wealth. He said, you know what brings people out of poverty? After all this talk about sharing the wealth, I realized a good old fashioned capitalism.
how about that?
And I just, just one of my favorite people. Like I know he's seems in his older years a little bit crotchety and a bit, but oh my gosh,
Aren't we all?
yeah, yeah. I just, one of the most enjoyable. I'm only probably about a halfway through it, and I can't stop listening to it. And so just his insight into that. Like, I just want to put a plug in there for any of you YouTube fans, and even if you're not, one of the most fascinating listens. It's been a while
Well,
since I've enjoyed a book this much.
well, Bono maybe should pass that message along to some of his buddies.
Yeah.
All right. So Brady, visit our website, www.playitbyyourpodcast.com. If you'd like to buy a shirt, go to the menu at the top of the page, go to the store link, and then scroll down to the bottom, click on the picture of the t-shirt. That will take you to buymeacoffee.com. You can buy said t-shirt there, and we will make sure that you get that. Brady, please take us out of this seriousness.
Oh yeah, we're not gonna.
Give us a little levity.
I will bring some levity. I will be the helium and hydrogen to your lead. Not that I'm teaching physical science right now, so I'm kind of in a rut. So that's where my mind's going. All right. So since we're kind of there was a couple articles picking on the 80s, but this really wasn't picking on. Guys, 80s movies are a great thing, but not all of them. And this is about this comes from a list of 30 of the worst films of the 80s. And for the sake of brevity, we're an hour and 12 minutes into this. There's going to be some of these movies as a child of the 80s and a cinemaphile. There's some of them I'm just not familiar with that I've not seen. Okay.
So
But
just mention names and we'll move
oh
on.
yeah, absolutely. So the first one that kicks off this list of 30 worst movies of the 80s is a sequel, and it is Caddyshack 2, which is arguably Caddyshack 1 is one of the greatest movies of the 80s, early 80s. And Caddyshack 2 was just hated by critics and honestly moviegoers alike because they went back to the well and it was kind of insulting because you took out basically the things that made it successful. There was only really one major star that Chevy Chase was in it.
And it was more like no, I mean, Dan Aykroyd was in it.
Dan Aykroyd was in it, but what didn't ring true about it? Dan Aykroyd was basically playing Bill Murray's part.
Right.
And then Rodney Dangerfield was not in it, but a very funny Jackie Mason was. And
Yeah.
now I'm not saying that this was the, Shawshank Redemption or Citizen Kane, but daggone it, if you don't laugh at the scene where Jackie Mason is at the country club and everybody is in their English jumping gear with their horses and he shows up with this Clydesdale, which lets off a huge Clydesdale flatulence as it's jumping one of the steeplechase, you're not alive.
All right. So I did make this comment to Brady before the show started, and I stand by it. if Caddyshack 2 were not called Caddyshack 2 and it was called by some other name, it would be much more highly regarded.
Yeah, I mean, it was a funny, silly movie.
And that's the thing. It's almost in that little compartment of it's so bad that it's good.
Yeah. And
I mean, I
you know,
enjoyed it.
there was a lot to unpack there. I think what bothered people the most, if that movie would have the same script, same everything, but if you would have had Bill Murray and Rodney Dangerfield in it, I think people would have looked at it differently.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So,
And probably they did not sign on because
well, they didn't want to go back to the well twice.
right. Okay, continue.
All right. Xanadu.
I never saw
Xanadu.
Xanadu.
What?
I never saw Xanadu.
I saw parts of it on my grandmother's movie channel, but I never got to sit through the whole thing because I really didn't get what I was seeing. What?
I don't know that phrase "grandmother's movie channel" just struck me funny. I'm not
Let's see,
sure why.
Ripley got cable before Sardinia did.
It did.
I mean, that's when I first saw nudity. Well, actually, it was Caddyshack. It was the first time I saw female nudity. Was on the movie channel, and but Xanadu, but Olivia's Newton's Johns were not shown.
So you spent a lot of time at grandma's after that.
Yeah. Yes, I did. I did. Critics either loved it or hated, but most decided it was too campy for their taste. Most viewers hated the Art Deco themes. See, don't get me started. I like the 80s Art Deco. It's interesting that what do you call it? It'll come to me in a moment. Hold on.
Like I said, I never saw Xanadu because I can't even
Mid-century. Thank you.
Other than Olivia Newton-John in general.
Okay. Now, I remember this movie, but not for the reasons you're going to think. Inchon. It was a movie about the Korean War and Douglas MacArthur. And it was a war movie that was plagued with so many problems. But by the way, this comes from travado.net. Okay, and that's where this list comes from. But Inchon cost over $46 million to make, and it was a horrible film. It was considered one of the worst films ever made, and it even won Razzies. But here is why I remember Inchon. My dad wanted to see it. My mom and I did not. So in one of the greatest con jobs ever, Dad, you go see Inchon. Mom, let's go see this movie. It's about school. It's called Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And my mother took me to see Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Oh, and your mom didn't know what she was getting into.
Oh, no. No.
Oh, and
She still claimed.
So you saw Phoebe Cates in the theater.
I will claim that I did not.
I bet your mom doesn't say that you did.
So, anyway,
now, Linda sometimes joins us. Linda,
yeah, if she's out there.
Maybe we'll hear this after the fact. Now, Linda, did you go?
And she might be listening to us because I got a text message. There's nothing I can do about it, but evidently the kids misplaced the remote at her house and was stuck on Cartoon Network. And she's like, "Can you ask the kids where they misplaced the remote?" But I can't because they're in the other room and I'm live. Sorry, Mom. So, now, okay, I'm going to confess one of my first huge celebrity crushes when I knew what girls were about and I knew I liked them was in 6th grade. And the movie Tarzan the Ape Man with Bo Derek.
Yeah.
And there was a particular like TV guide or something. She was on the cover of it and I was mesmerized. And two of my first two celebrity crushes was Debbie Harriet Blondie and Bo Derek.
Yeah.
So,
Bo Derek in a loincloth.
Oh, speaking of loincloth, Her co-star was the beefcakey Miles O'Keefe, which, by the way, is the greatest. You've heard me reference this, the greatest Mystery Science Theater 3000 riff of all time. How much Keefe is in this movie? And then all of a sudden, Miles O'Keefe pops on the screen.
We have Miles O'Keefe.
Oh, I about soiled myself laughing. Um, all right, but yeah, Tarzan the Man. From what I understand, it was absolutely terrible. And the thing is, I oh my gosh, sorry, I lost my list. It was pretty campy and pretty bad, and it was basically just a vehicle for Bo Derek to cavort around in various states of undress, and Miles O'Keefe to strut around with his chiseled physique. And it really didn't have as much to do about Tarzan as it did with the eye candy factor for both genders. So, but it was a comically bad movie, evidently. I mean,
Joey's
what?
with us.
Joey! We're talking about bad movies, Joey. This ought to be right up your alley. Sorry, my website kind of like my phone kind of start acting funkily, which gets me to. Sorry, guys, I'm usually not. Okay, Mommy Dearest. Few films have won as many Razzies as Mommy Dearest. The film walked away with 9 nominations and 5 wins, including Worst Picture and Worst Actress. Even though it was meant to be taken seriously, audiences found themselves laughing with the over-the-top makeup, the acting and makeup. Now, all I know about Mommy Dearest is one of those movies as a kid that I would tune out if it was on my grandma's movie channel. I would not watch it because it was serious. It was a grown-up movie. And I was like, all I remember is the famous line, no wire hangers, where she would
Right.
yeah, and that's it. But it is supposed to be pretty bad.
Yeah. Joan, what was her last name? It flew right out of my ear. Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford.
Yeah.
So I didn't really know who Joan Crawford was. I mean, I wasn't really wanting to watch that movie. So Joey, our topic is worst movies of the 80s. So that's where we are. But
And
I don't disagree with that statement.
okay, now on this next one though, I'm coming from a different place, and I liked this movie because keep in mind, I learned to read on comic books. So
Right.
I was aware of this character. So it wasn't as stupid to me as it might have been to the uninitiated. Do you know what I'm talking about, Eric?
No.
Howard the Duck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Howard the Duck. It was critically slammed for a number of reasons. They shot it in live action, unintentionally making Howard look terrifying. It was challenging to convey emotions because he was expressionless and had a bill, and it couldn't,
couldn't emote.
He couldn't emote. And it was also, and I will agree. Yes, it was set in Cleveland because Howard was a duck from space. He was an alien, and he made his living by driving a cab in Cleveland. I don't know about you, but whenever I see waterfowl driving a taxi cab, I mean, I don't know.
It brings me pause. I would not get into said taxi.
Yeah. So, but it was racy. Okay. I'm not trying. Okay, so when I say this, I'm not trying to be funny and cross that TV-14 line, but there's some implied bestiality in it.
Yeah.
With Leah Thompson and the duck, which you have to kind of overlook, kind of. And Leah Thompson was pretty
she was
darn cute.
Bomb back then.
She was. It's like, people wouldn't mind. I would let Leah Thompson rub my webbed feet. And so
of
don't
all the
even.
problems of all the problems your feet have, Brady, being webbed is not one of them, surprisingly.
I don't
enough.
have webbed feet. I'm
That's
making
what I'm saying. You have every other problem with your feet, not that one.
Okay.
Joey hasn't seen Howard the Duck. I figured
You need
Joey,
to. It's got its charm, but it was weird. Not everybody was ready for it. Not everybody got it. So, now this next movie, it is on every list of worst movies of all time. I've still never seen it, and I've never been real compelled to see it. But it featured two of the biggest stars of the time, Dustin Hoffman Warren Beatty and Al Pacino, Warren Beatty and Dustin Hoffman. Do you know what movie it is, Eric?
Yeah, it is the epitome of bad movies. The name of this movie is used in conjunction with bad movie, comically bad movie, epically bad movie, Ishtar.
Ishtar.
Yes.
How could a movie with Warren Beatty and Dustin Hoffman fail? It cost $55 million after several reshoots. The script was lumbering in dull lines, and finally, the audience couldn't figure out if it was intentionally horrible. It won 2 Razzies and was ranked one of the worst movies of all time by Time magazine. So, now this next one I've not heard of. This is new to me. Child of the 80s here.
By the way, Brady, I'm gonna. So we always talk about $55 million, and that doesn't seem like a whole lot of money right now. But in 2022, $55 million would be $151 million.
Good gosh. Epic bomb.
Yeah.
Epic
So,
bomb.
All right, continue.
Yeah, sorry. This next one I've never heard of. And it's obvious when you see the it's supposed to be an ET kind of vibe, but it's called Nuki. And Nuki was about it was heavily inspired by E.T. It was a knockoff. It left critics confused and became almost universally hated by all that saw it. It's considered one of the worst sci-fi movies ever made. So it involves aliens and nukes.
It's South African.
What?
It's a South African film.
Oh, well, anything that came from South Africa in the 80s is bad and evil by inherently.
That's probably why we didn't know of it, probably because it wasn't released very much around here.
Yeah.
There's just sharing that what you shared on the screen. There's the movie poster of Nuki. It looks very similar to
E.T. is very much a ripoff.
Yeah.
Now this next one, I've got to be honest. I don't recall seeing this because my thoughts on Superman have been very well stated. I don't love the Superman franchise because he's just too super. He's not interesting. And Christopher Reeves is speaking as a very white man, as the whitest man ever, and he was just dull. Okay. And Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, it was preachy, but it's infamous for its really bad. There was a Superman 1, 2, and 3, but somehow Superman 4, the special effects was even worse. And it's the one that the special effects are offensive because Superman's package in mid-flight, it's because they reshot it, it's going left to right, and it looks like it's undulating in his super speedos. And it's distracting.
No, I would have never noticed that, Brady.
Well, I did. I mean, I didn't notice it as a youth, but it was brought up, and I saw the clips, and I'm like, oh my God.
Brought up, so to speak.
Yeah, you don't want to see Christopher Reeves flopping back and forth in your face. And Superman.
Oh, excuse me. I don't remember a whole lot about that movie, but I do remember the one of the last scenes where he turned back time by spinning the globe the opposite way. Yeah,
that's an infamous moment. And sorry, folks, it just doesn't work that way. But that was in Superman 1.
Right.
And yeah. See, that's why I just don't love DC work besides Batman. But anyway, okay, now I remember this movie, and I think that we could agree that I have a dumb sense of humor. I like ridiculous, absurd humor. But there was an infamous movie, Leonard Part 6, starring Bill Cosby. And
Right.
it was a Bill Cosby vehicle, except there
And
was no Leonard 1 through 5. So it was trying to be funny, but it was so bad that the director himself disowned it before it was even reached theaters. Bill Cosby, the director, advised that people not see it. Critics did, and they tore it apart. The only good thing about Bill Cosby's Leonard Part 6 is that we didn't have to watch 1 through 5.
never mind that there was no 1 through 5, but
Yeah.
and there was no bigger person, maybe with the exception of like Michael Jackson in the 80s, than Bill Cosby.
Yeah. Now I'm going to have to do some digging. Leonard Part 6 might have predated The Cosby Show. It was in betwixt Fat Albert. I think this is when he was in his early 80s stand-up heyday, like the Daddy's Great Give Him Chocolate Cake
Yeah.
era.
Right.
And I think this might have and I could be wrong, it might have predated The Cosby Show.
Leonard Part
So,
6.
yeah, you'll have to look that up.
I'm going to look that up.
And
I
while
think it
he's
was right in the heyday there.
right in the heyday. So while he's looking that up, now to me, I've never seen this movie. And here's why I've never seen this next movie. Because
1987. 1987.
yeah, that would have been in the heyday, wouldn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. So it was so bad that his Cosby Show fame couldn't even, and his pudding pops couldn't get that over the goal line.
Couldn't salvage it.
Couldn't salvage it. So I have never seen this next movie. And even Helen Keller and Ray Charles could have seen that this movie is a ripoff. And it was the infamous Mac and Me. And
Yeah.
Mac and Me was trying to ride the coattails of E.T.
Yep.
And I knew that as a kid. It's like this is insulting. I'm not even going to see it. The only good thing from it is that the film is Paul Rudd showing a clip of it to Conan every time he's promoting one of his movies. So evidently, Paul Rudd has a like a little gag that he shows clips of Mac and Me.
See, this is even more egregious right here. I'm going to show this on the screen. Hold on. Having technical difficulties.
I'll
Right. Well, look at this.
Oh my gosh!
I mean, come on. I mean that
It has
in
the
and of
moon, the
itself-
silhouette. That's bad.
Yeah, that is bad. And you know, you talking about when we were kids. I didn't remember this movie being so recent. 1988.
Yeah, they tried to go back to it, and it just didn't catch because I mean it was obviously unoriginal Drek
So
in a world where
I mean, we weren't exactly kids at that point.
No, we weren't.
Juniors and seniors in high school.
Yeah. So I might have had a lot of teen angst, but I just knew that was pure pablum and fluff and crap.
Balderdash.
Now this one sounds fun. I've never heard of it, and I've not seen it. It's not The Thing with Kurt Russell. It's just Things. And it shows a man with a very, very large drill bit and it's a horror movie. And it was done on the budget of $35,000. And it starred an adult film actress that would go into fame, Amber Lynn. But it was so bad. It was just so bad. It was horror and schlock and just like unwatchable that it couldn't even be parodied.
It was Canadian.
Canadian?
Yes. So Canadian filmmaking hit its peak with Porky's in the early 80s and hit its nadir.
I was getting ready to say nadir. I'm not even making that up. I was trying to be suave.
With Things in 1989.
You remember The Thing where here comes Things.
Things.
stuff. Okay. The next one is, you know what? I don't mind somebody trying to go back to the well with this one, but Teen Wolf 2. Now,
TOO.
yes, it's not Teen Wolf 2, it's Teen Wolf also. And
Teen Wolf and Hal.
and how and TV's
No,
Jason Bateman.
wait a minute, bro. I have to qualify that. So, among our little circle of friends, that was our names for the Die Hard movies. So there was
No, Batman.
no, it was Die Hard.
I
Die
used it
Hard.
for Batman. There was Batman 1, Batman Returns, Batman and Hal.
See, I thought it was Die Hard, Die Harder, Die Hard, and Hal.
Die really hard. But Teen Wolf 2 wasn't too bad, and the fans actually liked it. It was just a little clunky. And once again, it's not the movie, it's not the script. It was the fact that Michael J. Fox was not in it.
And it was Jason Bateman, wasn't it?
TV's Jason Bateman.
Yes.
And so that was the main slam on it. Okay. This is one and only movie on this list that is an 80s movie that actually Mystery Science Theater made it more famous than it was, and it's Space Mutiny. And in Space Mutiny, I believe it was an Italian movie, but it's one of the best episodes of Mystery Science Theater 3000 ever. Most audiences hated the film, while others loved it because it was so horrible. So basically, they took stock footage from Battlestar Galactica.
South African.
There you go again. And the thing that was funniest about it, and it was unironic, there was a high-speed chase, but it was the slowest high-speed chase ever. It was like two underpowered golf carts going 5 miles an hour.
It was O.J. Simpson-esque.
Oh, it was something else, and it's a very funny episode of MST. Let's see. Okay, I'm gonna skip on down to the Blade Master, which is obviously a Conan the Barbarian thing, but the poster to the Blade Master, I don't know if they did this on purpose.
Let me find it. And who starred in Blade Master, Brady?
Is it Miles O'Keefe?
How much O'Keefe did we have in the Blade Master?
Miles O'Keefe. And look at are you seeing that, Eric?
I'm about to project it here.
For those of you at home, let's just say that once again, Miles O'Keefe is a buff fellow that most ladies would find very attractive. But let's just say he's suggestively holding his sword in a place that could only be described not accidental.
Just look up the Blade Master movie poster, and you'll see if you can't see it on the video version of our show.
Okay, now another one on the list is Jaws 3D. Jaws 3D. The concept of this is great. Movies shot in 3D have recently got popular, but while it scared children, adults were left unfazed and distracted by the horrible 3D effects. The plot and lack of tension makes it worse. This is one, once again, I reference our friend Doug. This is the movie that he always said that, let's see, hold on, let me grab this. It was so obvious they were trying to make 3D effects. Like, look, right over, wait a minute. Here. I'm taking right here. And the pencil would go like in three unnecessary pencil shots and things like that. There we go. And it's just silliness. Um, but it's just a bad movie. And that kind of almost brings us to the end. Now, there's other movies that always get lumped in. I'm going to throw in a few that's not on the list. Drop Dead Fred gets brought up a lot as a Beetlejuice ripoff.
Uh-huh.
And there's only one saving grace of Drop Dead Fred. Phoebe
What?
Cates.
Phoebe Cates's filmography is not very long, but I would see Phoebe Cates in anything.
Or nothing at all.
Right.
So, but anyway, I hope you enjoyed those lists. And there's other bad 80s movies. There's tons. The one that comes to my mind is it was Ed Town video in Sardinia. I remember the VHS box of this movie. The cover looked terrifying. It was called Meat Eater. Had a bloody fork on it. And honestly, it was like a propaganda film about vegetarianism.
Let me find it here.
Like I said, the box was absolutely terrifying. And like I said, it was a bloody dripping fork. It's like, oh, this has got to be good. And the thing I remember most about it is there is one part when they're going on their anti-meat rant where they start singing the Oscar Mayer Wiener jingle. Oh, I wish I were an Oscar Mayer. And I'm like, what am I watching? There is no bloody fork in this movie. This is dumb.
So you sure on the name of that movie? Because I've not heard of it.
Oh, I'm sure as I am in front of you.
It was called Meat Eaters or Meat Eater?
Meat Eater.
I can't seem to find anything about it.
Well.
Oh, well, all right, so I see The Meat Eater, a 1979 film.
Oh, yeah?
Big Meat Eater.
The Meat Eater.
1979.
Okay. And look at that scary thing. Look at that dripping fork. Anyway, so there's a lot of bad movies, and bad movies can be fun. Eric, to this day, we've talked about this previously. That horribly stupid movie we paid good money for in high school. There was just happened to be this period of time there was no good movies out, and we were bored.
Out of?
Yes, about a priest, and as he gets into college, I mean, it segued to these scenes about cavemen.
Yeah,
and we got up and walked out. I was like, "What are we watching?"
Well, I felt that way about a Quentin Tarantino movie, but you all liked it.
Oh, don't besmirch Quentin. I still stand by. Eric is referring to From Dusk Till Dawn. And the thing was, Eric was not jumped in. He was enjoying this movie so much when it was a bank robber movie.
Yeah.
In that moment where it stops being a bank robber movie and becomes a vampire movie, when the beautiful lass is dancing on a table and she has a 3-foot tongue shoot out of her mouth and she starts attacking the jugular of somebody. I cannot repeat what Eric said.
It was an exclamation. It may have had an expletive in it.
It
was a question.
It was a question
starting with what the
farn. What the farn? And it was not premeditated. Farn. It was just a legitimate, like, I don't know what I'm seeing and I'm disturbed.
Yes. And I was checked out. I no longer enjoyed the movie at that point. My ability to suspend disbelief was over at that point. Couldn't do it.
Yeah.
If I had been suspending disbelief the whole time, it would have been fine.
It was just that switch.
It was a totally plausible bank robbery movie until that point. I couldn't make the shift.
Yeah, and I think didn't you have to see Harvey's Keitel's in that movie too? Am I remembering that right?
Yeah.
So,
Which was disturbing in and of itself. Probably more disturbing than the vampires, but
yeah.
all right. So there is a show that was an homage to the 80s, or what some people feel were the worst of the 80s. We, of course, in a lot of cases, dispute that particular opinion, and we gave our opinions on that. Please get on our Facebook page. Let us know your opinion on any of the things we talked about. Those of you who lived through the decade as we did, even if you didn't, maybe you have an opinion on it. We certainly would love to hear that. So, Brady, you were pointing there. Once again, visit the website, www.playitbyyearpodcast.com. Check out different things about our show, our isms. Talks about some of the terms we use on here in our Urban Dictionary-esque listing of those terms. So check that out at the website. Anything else, Brady?
Nope. Just be careful out there. If you're in the southern Ohio area where we're at, there's a little bit of slickeriness going on. Slickery as teachers and administrators if we're in the education system. So we always have to check out that nighttime that nighttime weather forecast to see if we're going to get a little bit of a sleep in time or something.
Yes. Could I get some extra sleep? That will make my snowy front yard worth it.
There you go.
All right. Audio version of this podcast will be released, as always, Friday morning at 3 a.m. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and the iHeartRadio app.
And we're on fire.
We're on fire. Most anywhere else you can find an audio podcast, you can probably find us on that platform. Video-wise, our Spotify shows are now video as well. If you're listening on a audio device, you'll still get an audio version of that. But if you have a device where you can get Spotify video-wise, you can see a video version. YouTube, look at our YouTube channel, playitbyearpodcast.com. You can see all of our shows that we've recorded ever since episode 30. And Twitch. Those are archived for about 2 weeks if you want to see them on Twitch. You gamer people who hang around Twitch. Social media, we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagrams. You can find all those links on our website. If you'd like to interact with us via email, admin@playitbyearpodcast.com. If you'd like to leave a voice message, click the link at your audio podcast provider on the iHeartRadio app. It is a microphone-shaped thing called TalkBack, and you can leave a audio message that way. Anything else for the good of the order, Brady?
Nay, sir.
Nay, he says. All right, then, take us out.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to the Play It By Ear podcast. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter at Play It By Ear Pod 2, and our website at anchor.fm/Play It By Ear podcast. Thanks again, and join us next time as we play it by ear.